What's up, fungal associates? Welcome to Completely Arbortrary, the podcast about trees and other related topics. I am one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson. And of course, as always, I'm joined by Mr. Casey Clapp. Hi, Case.
Hello, Alex. Everyone, good day. How are you?
Good day. I am okay.
Excelente.
And before I forget, This is what we have to do so we don't forget things.
Oh.
I wanted to mention that we are having a huge t-shirt sale right now, Casey.
Great choice. To lead with that, I agree.
Thank you. 2 of our t-shirts, our Douglas Fir tee that was designed by Leanne Flug. Awesome shirt. Comes in 2 colors. And our Tree Buds tee, designed by Tori Gorham, are both 25% off?
Hold on, let's ask the producers are shaking their head. Yes. Yeah, that's on purpose.
Just to be clear, if this t-shirt normally cost $100, it would now cost $75. That's the best math I can do.
It's the easiest.
There you go, 25% off. And all you have to do is use the coupon code when you check out, shirts25.
Yeah.
25.
Yes, exactly.
If you go to our merch store, arbortrarypod.com/merch, there's a little tab at the top that says shirt sale. Click it, and it will take you to the shirts available.
Yeah, it's going to be, they're great shirts. We love them to death, and we have them. So we're just like, you know what? Let's get these on people's backs. It's Christmas time. People are going to be looking for gifts. So if you're thinking, hey, I got a friend out there who likes trees and things, send him a shirt.
Send them a shirt.
There you go.
Send them a shirt. Send them a shirt.
Send him a shirt. Send him a shirt. Send him a shirt. Nice.
All right, Casey.
Okay.
Well, today we're talking about a tree.
That's right, we are. Just as we do every week, Pinky.
Well, Casey, my first thought when I saw today's tree was, oh, that's really long. That's a really long name.
Oh, that was your first thought.
Yeah.
Just straight, how many letters are in it? How many am I needing to type right now?
Yeah, it's going to suck having to type that into a title of a podcast episode.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm even okay. I had a space in it initially, and I decided to take that space out.
Oh, interesting.
In one space, in one particular location.
Okay.
Yes. So,
well, let's
just let them know.
drop the hat. We're talking Curlleaf Mountain-Mahogany.
Correct. Well done. I was going to put a space between curl and leaf.
Oh, but there should not be a space.
Well, this is an interesting thing. It can go either way.
And I've also seen it hyphenated.
Yes, which is, I believe, incorrect.
Okay.
And this is...
Because it's not a false leaf.
Exactly, correct. The leaf is a leaf, and it is, in fact, curled.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I was doing some work on my book. They sent my edits back, and the editor went through and noted a bunch of places where I had put dashes between things, like Tree of Heaven.
Oh, sure.
Doesn't need to be dashed.
Wow.
Because there's no convention that says so.
Okay.
As you rightly have noted, the dash usually means false. So you'd say this is a western red cedar of Douglas fir.
I just want to say, Mr. Writer, it's not called a dash, it's called a hyphen.
Sorry, you were correct.
A dash is literally something else.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Thank you.
It's been bothering me since you started talking.
Okay, yeah, hyphen. Yeah, so you don't do it. You don't add that in because there's no convention for it.
It is fun to hyphen things, though.
It is, but it feels...
It's kind of like a fun tool to throw in. Yeah, it's like it's a stylistic choice.
I do use it in a lot of stylistic choice situations.
Sure.
That's correct.
Well, that's right. We're talking Curlleaf or Curlleaf, right? Curlleaf Mountain-Mahogany. Mountain-Mahogany is also hyphenated.
But that's hyphenated. So, we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about it all later.
Well, we got to do so after a break. We'll be right back with Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary. Today we're talking the Curlleaf Mountain-Mahogany, and that is Curlleaf, one word, Mountain-Mahogany hyphenated, which tells me it's a false mountain.
Correct.
This is a hill tree.
This is in fact not from the mountains, but it is a mahogany.
That's so silly.
Yeah, it's not. It's none of those things.
Okay.
Yeah, but it does grow in the mountains, which is pleasant.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Well, let's imagine that you and I, Casey,
all right,
are in said mountains. Maybe the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah.
That strikes me as a Rocky Mountain tree.
I think you'd find it out there. Okay. Yeah, just barely, but more or less. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we come across some Curlleaf Mountain-Mahogany. Let's ID this tree.
That sounds great. Oh, right. So this is Cercocarpus ledifolius.
I was having some fun.
Oh, you were?
Because I read this as if it were Spanish.
Ah, okay.
And I said, Cercocarpus ledifolius.
Nice.
Ledifolius.
That's beautiful. Your accent's exquisite.
Cercocarpus ledifolius.
Well, if you were to say this as a Greek, you would probably say Kirko.
Kirko, yeah.
Yes, because that's
right.
actually where it comes from, which is very fascinating.
Kirko?
And yeah, so it's from the Greek kirkos, which means tail, and karpos, which means fruit. So it's the tail fruit mahogany.
Wow.
And ledifolius means that it looks like ledum, which is the Labrador tea is a species. It's in the
Labrador?
Ericaceae.
Is that a dog?
Well, I don't think they're actually referring to the dog in this case. I think it's actually referring to ledum groenlandicum, which I'm not sure what groenlandicum means actually, but I think it's the island of Labrador.
I did not even know that was a place.
Oh,
so
yeah,
the wild dogs from Labrador must have become the Labrador that we all know and love.
That's exactly right. We domesticated them, and now they're here.
Is this true?
I have no idea.
It's got to be true.
Wait, do I look like a dog expert here, Alex?
It's like the Earl of Sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Well, someone's going to need to give us the facts on that.
Can I also just say, Labrador is a region within the province of Newfoundland.
Yes.
Another dog.
That's true. So maybe the Labradors came from Newfoundland.
What the fuck?
Now
This is blowing my mind.
Now we're really getting somewhere here. We got a lot deeper to go.
This is incredible. All right, let's go.
Well, this is a tree that I think is fascinating for a lot of different reasons. But we're going to start with just talking about kind of where it grows, how it grows, and what it does. This is native to the western section of North America.
Okay.
But more or less western United States and western kind of northern Mexico is where you're going to find it.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
it's a Southwest tree.
It is, but also up here in Oregon, all the way to Montana.
Okay.
So it grows very kind of sporadically, but it's one of those trees that grows sporadically, but also is like very common. So as you walk around, you go up to much higher elevations. This is where you're going to find it. So near 7,000 feet in Oregon, or at the high kind of exposed mountain ranges, mostly on the east side of the Cascade, down the Siskiyous, and like the really kind of dry Great Basin kind of section.
The
That's where
rain
you find it.
shadow area.
Exactly. And you find it in really harsh conditions. It's very, very drought tolerant and growing in places where you're like, why is a tree growing there?
Totally.
That's a bunch of rocks.
It does look very scrubbish.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I described it as a scrubby shrub,
There you go.
which I thought was fun because it grows a lot like that. So it looks like a multi-branched, scrubby, evergreen shrub of a tree. And I had to really hold myself accountable here.
Oh, accountable.
Exactly, because it's a slow grower. So it usually has multiple stems, and it grows up and out and creates ultimately this kind of umbrella-shaped canopy, which to me also looks very triangular because it doesn't kind of get the curve on the top like a lot of umbrella-shaped trees.
Okay.
But it looks like a triangular-shaped tree with, a couple stems coming up, and they kind of grow up and out and look almost like they are a platter kind of thing. This is how I see it.
Okay.
Other people can see it differently, but it tends to get about the highest 35 feet tall.
Casey, I got to ask.
Please.
Is this a tree?
This is a tree.
Are you sure?
I am. In fact, I will look right here at my notes, which I've written before I got here, and I say, now, as I say that, I want to make a note. Often, this is when I say this is a big shrub, but I believe this plant is a tree because it simply asserts itself as such, and I think when you see them, you will also say the same thing.
Okay, it's an emotional thing.
Exactly. I wrote that down. I literally just read verbatim what I
Yes.
wrote, except the very last where I said, I think you'll think it's undeniable. So, a little paraphrasing there at the end. So this tree, whenever I come across it, and I've come across them multiple times doing hikes in kind of the drier areas like we talked about, and as you're going around, you'll notice that you have big, tall conifers that grow straight up. They are trees. They have that perfect monopodal thing, which is what we talked about. Their kind of form. They grow on one stem most of the time.
X-current?
X-current monopodal. Yes, precisely.
I want to interject because I was editing last week's episode recently,
Okay.
and I was like, it was driving me insane. I was like, I have to think of a mnemonic device for this X current, D current thing. I think I've got one.
Okay, give it us.
So far, it's working for me.
Okay.
X current, the letter X.
Yeah.
I know I said it goes out, you know, but I was thinking of the top of the X. Because an X is symmetrical. Look at the bottom of the X.
Yeah, it's a triangle there.
It's a triangle. Okay, that's number one.
Okay.
And I was like, well, how do I remember D current? Besides, it's just the opposite of X current. D current, D means like, D is like a prefix that means like or
disconnected,
away,
detached. Yeah.
So I'm like D, it grows away from the main stem.
Yeah, that's great, Alex.
And
that's
so do
fabulous.
X current trees, but you know what I mean.
I get it. You can't take metaphors like this. Mnemonic devices too far.
No,
too intense.
not too logically.
You got to use them in that strict sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
Okay, great. I think that's perfect. Well done.
Yep. Thanks.
Good job. It's worked, obviously.
Yeah, it worked today.
There you go.
And I don't think I'll ever forget again.
Good. This is great. And neither will you, dear listener.
You're welcome.
So,
Trademark.
All right. Hey, dear listener, if you use that, we're going to sue you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Casey. Well, let's talk about, the bark, let's say.
Yeah, let's move down to it. So this little guy, it grows up as a tree. It's a thing that you have to go around, but you can see it from afar, and you can think, that looks like a tree. And another thing that you'll see from afar is its very specific kind of habit. So I shouldn't say habit in this case. It's kind of this textural appearance that has a lot to do with the bark.
Okay.
So the tree itself, to me, looks like an olive, like a wild olive growing out in the Mediterranean or something like that.
Yeah, it's very like far-reaching almost.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of has this weird, strange kind of growth habit to it that gives it this very particular shape. But the bark on the twigs is just a very smooth, light gray color, especially on the younger twigs. Now, as they get older, that smooth bark becomes rougher, a little bit more brown, and eventually it starts to split into like these more intense furrows.
Okay.
And it will get to allegedly 3 feet, like a meter in diameter, some of the oldest ones. And a meter in diameter creates bark that's very fissured and almost has like an inch-sized furrows between this kind of larger bark. So it gets really kind of rough and tumble, which of course makes sense where it's growing. It grows in some of the most extreme, harsh environments that either have fire or don't have enough vegetation because it's too dry that fire can't actually go through, but it's still very hot and dry.
Is bark also kind of used for like water retention?
Yeah, a little bit, but not in this case. I mean, it is in the fact that, it is a seal around the whole tree. But in this case, it's not like any other drought-tolerant species like the boojum tree, where the bark itself, like the whole tree is a big water storage unit.
Like a succulent?
Yeah, this is not that.
Okay.
It does not store water extraordinarily as an adaptation.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't lose water as an adaptation. And one thing that I think is really beautiful about this bark is that it grows up and kind of looks a mixture between a hawthorn and a pear in terms of the bark.
Okay.
Where
that's so specific.
Yes, and I looked at it and I tried to, I was like, what am I thinking when I see this? And those are the two that come to my mind.
Okay.
Because a pear tends to get these kind of rough, longer plates, and a hawthorn tends to have kind of scales that are elongated vertically and kind of shag off a little bit.
Does this have rough, long plate scales?
Yes.
Cool.
But they don't really pop off.
Okay.
They kind of look like they weave themselves up the stem and cover it quite uniformly, but they don't actually pop off. They don't actually like you can't make them or imagine them as scale-like, but they look like it. They look like you could kind of just reach over and kind of move your fingers around the branch and they'll kind of like flake off, but I don't think they do. They don't really do that.
Yeah, they look a bit like God, what's that lizard? There's some like lizard that people keep for pets.
Yeah. Is it like the spiny one?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That squirts blood out of its eyes?
I don't know about that. Is that something that happens?
Yeah. If it's the one I'm thinking of.
God damn, that's horrific. But yeah, I think so. Like kind of a shaggy, horny.
Whoa, Alex is
Shag and horny?
You're going somewhere with this.
Let's call this thing the Austin Powers tree.
It's the Austin Powers mahogany. That's hilarious. Yeah, I what is it? It's I think they just call it a horny lizard. It's the little ones that have like spikes all around the back.
Yeah.
They run around, they eat ants and things like that.
That's what it looks like to me.
Okay, gotcha. All right, great. That works out well.
Horned lizard.
Horned lizard, not a horny lizard. A horny lizard can have horns or not.
Sure.
So that's the bark. And why I say it's kind of unique is because the leaves are kind of tufted at the end of little short spur shoots along the twig, but also at the end of normal kind of growing twigs. So it's got like kind of a semi-dimorphic appearance to it. But because its leaves do not like fully take up the outer space around it, you can see the bark kind of between these little like splotches of leaves. So it creates almost like this this kind of thick, almost rubbery looking gray stem with these little poofs of leaves that come out around it.
Interesting.
And it has this like very, very particular kind of textural appearance when you look at it.
Cool.
So they come together this way, and they grow generally as we've talked about as shrubs at first, and they grow very slow, and they grow these tiny leaves. So the trees will begin, and you'll never think they're ever going to become a tree ever. Everything about them looks small and it kind of looks like, man, you're struggling right now, aren't you?
Looks like grass almost.
It looks like a sticky grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as it slowly grows up,
Yeah, maybe not grass. I was thinking like shrub bush or shrub.
Yeah. Okay.
Scrub brush.
Yeah, scrub is the best term.
Yeah.
It's perfect, and it's exactly what it looks like. It's perfect. That's exactly correct. But as it gets older, these little tiny leaves start to create that larger canopy, and they kind of all run together, and you realize, okay, yeah, you are looking like a tree. But it takes like 100 years for it to grow to get to this size.
Let them cook.
To get to 30 feet.
That's
it takes
crazy.
that long.
100 years for 30 feet of tree.
100 years for 30 feet of tree. Exactly.
I could get you 30 feet of tree in half that time.
I could get you that in like 20 feet. 20 years. Come on.
And or feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. That's very, very slow.
Super slow growing.
Do trees in this environment they must just grow slower in general?
I think you could probably say yes.
So the resources are so much less.
Precisely. But at the same time, not really. You have ponderosa pine that grows quite tall. Douglas fir in this area.
That's true.
White fir grows in this area. A lot of junipers will be growing here.
I was foolish.
So these trees will grow way faster, but they're a little bit more, I don't know, maybe better adapted for whatever reason. But this is another one of those broadleaf trees that kind of does the same thing and has the same kind of adaptations as a conifer, especially in the leaves.
They look like needles.
They do, and they look like that because they're really lanceolate. They're about an inch long, plus or minus a little bit here or there. And their edges are curled under.
Yes.
Given the name, so they have revolute leaves along the margin is revolute.
Revolute.
Yes, they slightly curve under themselves.
Okay, where does that come from?
I don't know. I think revolve, like maybe the bottom revolves under kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they're very thick, so their cuticle is thick, and they have what's called sunken stomata, as well as a tiny bit of pubescence all over the leaves, and the leaves are evergreen. All these things combined tell you that this is a drought-tolerant plant.
Sure is.
It will be able to take these harsh, dry conditions and not lose water. So just like the junipers, just like these other plants, they just sit there and take it, but they don't have like the world's deepest root systems or anything like that. They can just kind of sit there and say, hey, great, I got it. And I'm going to use this extremely efficiently.
It's very resourceful.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I see that maybe potentially at least one of the photos that you took.
I did. I took the photos that we've shared here.
And I see that maybe this twig has pubescence as well.
It does, yes, right at the very end of it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, I think that they are so minutely pubescent, not in terms of the amount, but the kind of length of the little hairs, that they actually are like covered in what I would say is tomentose.
That's right.
Tomentose.
I knew there was a different word for that.
Yes, which is essentially like take pubescent and multiply it in terms of density and fuzziness.
Yeah.
And it becomes tomentose.
Okay. We've talked about the analogy being hair is to pubescence as fur is to tomentose.
Yes. Yeah. Precisely.
that.
So the other thing that I think is very important about this is the flowers.
These are great.
You like the flowers?
Well, this is what I guess I thought the word curl was coming from, even though it says curl leaf.
I have a feeling you're looking at the fruit.
You know what, Casey? I am.
Nice.
But hey, what's the difference?
Yeah,
right?
what's the difference? All right, Alex. Okay, listen.
Just a few weeks.
I'm going to stop you there. The flowers, and this might blow everyone's mind,
Wow.
are rose flowers. This tree is in the rose family.
Oh, how about that?
Rosaceae.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it
You got a
is
mahogany in the rose family? Are mahoganies... Oh, it's a false mahogany.
a false mahogany. Yeah. Oh, Alex is panicking for a second. No, in fact, we're going to get a little bit into mahogany, but we're not going to cover that because you know what, Alex? We're going to cover that species later. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I just don't feel like it today.
No, neither do I. Thank you. So mahogany, our mountain mahogany, is in the rose family. So it's Cercocarpus. That's in the rose family, Rosaceae. And it is such because it has parts that are in fives, and it has this kind of cupped base at the bottom of the flower. And that's very rose family-esque. So parts in five. The funny thing about this is it is apetalous, which means it has no petals.
Oh, interesting.
Only has calyx, which are the collection of sepals around the outside.
It's all just laying it bare.
Exactly.
I mean,
Sure is.
I know these are rose flowers, quote unquote. These are so utility, Casey.
They absolutely are. They are utility AF.
No petals too. That's
There's
very
no petals.
utility.
Yeah, they're like, we don't need any flashy parts.
Yep.
Just give me the basics. It has a couple stamens that are popping out on the side with pollen, and it has one long style right in the middle.
I see that. It has a nice general red pink stock color.
Exactly. And honestly, they're no more than a half an inch wide. Like, they're tiny little things.
Are there many of them on a tree?
Not really. I mean, there are many, but they're inconspicuous. You're not going to look at that tree and be like, wow, look at those flowers.
Right.
You're going to look at that tree and be like, is that a shrub? And then you're going to move on.
What are those red things?
What are those
they're
red things?
flowers.
No, I don't care. So the thing about it, though, as you duly already noted, is that the flowers turn into fruit. These flowers, as they turn into fruit, do one particular thing which really sets this species apart.
Wow.
Their style does not cease its existence as the flower is kind of seeing its way out of the world.
Does the style become the flower?
Does
does the style become the fruit?
It becomes a huge part of the fruit. It becomes a long, flamboyant, flare-filled, curly stalk that comes off of it. And it produces a bunch of long, very thin hairs. So it looks like a pipe cleaner or like a bottle brush or something.
They're white hairs.
Exactly. And they're usually on like this brownish kind of central spinny corkscrew looking thing. And so the style of the flower retains and becomes this plumose looking kind of like frilly feather-like thing that you'd imagine on the top of someone's hat.
Sure.
And that is attached to the fruit, which is an achene. Now, an achene, Alex, you remember what this is?
I've heard it a million times, but no, I don't remember.
It is the seeds that are on the outside of a strawberry.
Oh, that's right.
They are achenes,
They're
which
inside out.
exactly, technically, they are fruit. So there is an ovary surrounding a seed, but both are hard. Both become kind of seed-like in terms of shell strong, kind of, you know, they're tough. But there's no difference between essentially the seed and the fruit. You look at it and you think that's a seed, but it is in fact an ovary that looks like a seed. So it's like a seed with just one outer layer on top of it.
Okay. It's not an exposed, like a ginkgo?
No, it's not exposed. No, there's still that ovary there.
Okay.
And so for the example,
But it just looks seed-like?
Exactly. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, like the fruit is no bigger than the seed itself.
Interesting.
So for the example of the strawberry, it's actually the receptacle of the strawberry that grows and gets really big and delicious and tasty. That's what we eat. And on the outside, that is all of these little achenes, these little fruit that look for all intents and purposes like a seed.
So strange.
They're so strange and they're so tasty, so delicious.
Oh, wait. The things that look like a seed are not
Individual
seeds?
fruit.
What?
Yes.
On a strawberry?
Yes. Yeah, the strawberry, the fleshy bit, grows from essentially the inside base of the flower and becomes really big and large. The ovaries are set on the outside of it. So as it gets bigger and large, they kind of get pushed out. It would be like taking a balloon when it's not inflated and putting a bunch of tiny dots on it that are a 1/4 inch apart. Then you blow it up, and as they blow up, they move from a 1/4 inch to 2 inches apart when it's fully expanded. You know what I mean? But each one of those was, in fact, its own particular ovary with its own seeds inside, or a pre-seed, its own ovule inside.
Wow.
So that's the kind of unique thing about an achene. It looks like a seed, but it's technically a fruit. And then this
strange.
one, I know, nature's just kind of all silly, isn't it? But here's the thing, Alex. Attached to it is this big, long, frilly, feather-like bit, which helps it move its way through with a nice little breeze. It'll just go whoop, pick it up and float it off.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't float kind of like a dandelion or something like that, but it floats enough that the wind can pick it up and take it a pretty decent distance.
Why does it need to do that?
It's dispersal, baby.
But this is the fruit.
This is the fruit, yeah.
Oh, God, never mind.
So instead of getting, okay, you were thinking something different, right?
All this shit has got me topsy-turvy, I swear.
Oh, Alex, all right. We on the same page?
I guess.
There's a little frill coming out of a seed that is surrounded by an ovary, but you can't tell the difference between them.
Yeah.
The little fuzzy thing, little tail,
Is the fruit.
is the fruit's feather that helps it fly away to a new place.
Got it.
It-
Oh, it's almost like one of those, you like roll it in your hands and it goes flying. You
Yes,
know?
yeah,
Little
kind of like that.
helicopter thing.
Yeah.
Ah, fun.
Yeah, so it's fun, but it doesn't really do...
I have to compare it to a child's toy to understand it.
Hey, you know what, Alex? This is, I think, the best way. Everyone knows what you're talking about, so that's a perfect metaphor.
That's true, Casey. I will say, all I'm really thinking about is how caterpillar-like these are. And if I came across this tree, I'd be like, oh, geez, what are those?
It's covered in caterpillars.
Yeah.
That's very true. It does kind of look like that. In fact, it specifically looks like the bagworm caterpillar.
Gross.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
What an awful name. Well, let's move on.
All right. So one thing that I think is worth noting here, as I've said a little bit, it only gets about 35 feet tall, but it is a 35-foot tall tree that when you see it, it says, I'm a tree. And you're like, yeah, I think you are.
Okay.
It just gives you the vibe tree.
It's very mature.
Yes, maybe that's the
looking.
right term. Yeah. Like it looks like, I don't know, almost a bonsai kind of in this regard.
Totally.
Where you can see even small pinions and junipers where they grow up and you're like, well, yeah, I see that it's a tree, but it has like so many shrub qualities to it. This, I think, is the same thing.
Okay.
Where it's got a lot of shrubbiness to it, especially when it's young. But, when it reaches, I guess it's toddler age at 200, you're like, okay, yeah, you're pretty good. You're a reasonable sized tree. You got stems that come up and they curl around. You got a nice canopy you can go under, and it looks for all intents and purposes like a tree.
Great.
It also lives for like 1,300 years.
Whoa!
That's 1,300 years.
You buried the lead, Case.
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure everyone listens and they get all the way here.
1,300 years.
Yeah, there's some that are estimated at 1,350 years old in the Shoshone Range in Nevada.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? One last thing that I think is really fascinating about this tree, in terms of like, a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about in a second, is they have the same root nodules that other leguminous plants have.
We just talked about this.
Yeah. So it is not exclusive, as we noted, to the Fabaceae, the family that is the pea family. This is just another example of a tree that grows in really harsh areas. And so it has developed this symbiotic relationship with these bacteria that help it fix nitrogen in an otherwise pretty hostile environment.
Totally. Okay.
Yeah. So it was, as we noted, it's found kind of in all the rough spots in all of the mountains, essentially west of the Rocky Mountains. And you'll find it with like limber pine growing at the tops of mountains. I've seen it with bristlecone pine in the White Mountains of California. I've seen it in the Ochoco Ranges. I've seen it in the northern ranges of the Great Basin in Nevada and Utah and Idaho. It's this really kind of enigmatic tree that whenever I see it, I just love it. Like I just am captivated by it. Even though it has nothing in the sense of like giantness. It's not like one of those trees you look at and you're like, whoa, that's a tree. It's not a gigantic, huge tree. So the conifers that live for 400 years will dwarf this tree at these high elevations, yet they'll still be 35 feet tall.
Yeah.
You know? The bristlecone pines, the limber pines, the white bark pines, like they get big, but they don't get big.
Sure.
You know, there are no sequoias, no Douglas fir, anything like that. So this is a tree that, for whatever reason, captivates me. So I gave some thought to that. And I've also been doing a lot of reflecting this week.
Yeah.
Thinking about a lot of different stuff.
Life and stuff.
A lot of different things with life, as many of you may know. And if you don't know, spoiler alert, Donald Trump is our next president.
Yeah.
And so it gave me some thought because this time is different than the last time, you know, and I've heard pundits talk about this. And my sister actually even called me yesterday and be like, "Are you okay, Casey?" And she was thinking like, are you okay? Because the last time Donald Trump got elected, the city of Portland just absolutely protested the hell out of it.
Yes.
And it was a huge, huge deal. And I have heard podcasts that talked about this last time versus this time. They're like, there's a different temperature and there's a different situation entirely. In almost every way that by this time you hear this, everyone will have heard and they'll know all the ins and outs of the pundits and what they think about this or that. However, it made me think that, okay, I gotta reflect on this and I have to also adjust my thinking about the world. And right now, to share a little bit from me, I've been in a weird spot because I've been feeling very positive. I have a lot of good things going on in my life. And there has been, at the same time, hard things that have been happening in my life as well. So one thing, and just if you'll hear me out for a second, Alex,
Okay.
I would appreciate it.
Can you see my eyes darting around trying to figure out where you're going?
Yes, I do. Yeah. And
Sorry.
I promise we're getting back to
Okay,
it.
I'm
And
sorry.
No.
I'll just sit and listen.
No,
I'll
no.
close my eyes.
I'm mostly just saying, just give me 30 seconds to just chat about something that doesn't sound like it's going to come
Okay,
back.
yeah.
And I also want to hear this
Because you know
from
I get a little nervous.
I know you do, and I don't want you to get nervous here. So my reflecting has been, I just finished this book, which has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. One of the most intense projects I've put my mind to. And I'm very proud of it. I think it's going to be really great. But at the same time, I'm going through a breakup and dealing with this kind of change in relationship and change in boundaries and kind of renegotiating, you know, how my life was for the last year in these two ways. And in those two ways, one of them is also the idea that I am looking at a lack of things to do to some extent. So I no longer have this big project in front of me. It's like, oh, what are you going to do today? Well, Alex, I'm going to go type about a tree today. Just like I did yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day is the same thing I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I don't have that anymore. And I'm like, okay, what's in front of me? And I feel kind of untethered, a little bit undirectional, you know? I don't think that's technically a word, but
Maybe omnidirectional.
yes, there you go. I'm going in all directions at once, which is a very unsustainable way to travel. But at the same time, it is also like, you know, there's infinite opportunity there. And at the end of this, I also am reflecting on this huge change in terms of having Trump be the new president. It's not my choice. And I think that it represents like this big kind of doom cloud in front of us. I have no idea where things are going to go.
Yeah.
So all this to say, I was thinking about, we were going to do a different tree today entirely. And I said, I don't want to do that tree anymore. Kind of beat that to death. I can't talk about another weird Pinaceae that no one knows about.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to choose a different tree.
Yeah, we've done it.
Exactly. So for those of you who don't know, there was going to be Cathaya, I think agrifolia, which is going to be great. So go look that up. It's a beautiful little tree. So I decided to do this tree because I was thinking about reflection. I was thinking about, okay, where am I going? And I like to look at nature and kind of come up with metaphor and kind of come up with, well, how does this tree do it? How does this thing do it? How does the world change around you, yet you still survive for 1,300 years? You know, that's a lot of change to deal with. And I came upon this tree because I actually also looked up a picture of it recently, and I was like, oh, you know what? Have we covered that tree? No, we haven't. And it made me think that this tree is growing in some of the harshest environments. And what does it do? How does it do it? How does it survive? How can I take that as a reflective moment and say, okay, how can I survive? How can I focus on maintaining and carrying my way through? So 2 things I want to say from here. 1, what I took from this. And B, I want to hear your kind of method if you feel like sharing. Like, do you look at something in nature or something in your life and say, okay, I got to recenter myself. I have to kind of give myself a grounding point. Is there something that you use for that?
Interesting.
So I'll describe a little bit in mine.
Yeah.
While you can kind of think and reflect too if you choose.
Yeah.
So for this tree, it is not quite the tree that is the flashiest thing in the world. People don't come from from Canada or the East Coast or anywhere else to find this tree.
I was going to say this tree looks like a less flashy but equally respectable bristlecone pine, you know?
I think it can be, yeah.
It's like, let's see the Eiffel Tower while we're here. But there's this really cool wax museum that nobody goes to.
That's amazing.
It's going to blow your mind.
Yeah. You're spot on.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it quite has the grandeur of 5,000 years, and it doesn't have all the broken parts, but it still is a 1,300-year-old tree.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Several hundred years old to be 30 feet tall. You know, so it's got this like ancientness to it that kind of feels intrinsic, and so it has this like subtle beauty that no one pays a whole lot of attention to unless you specifically pay attention to it. It also is able to kind of focus on itself, focus on just growing 1 millimeter at a time.
Totally.
To get itself where it's going. It's in no hurry. It knows that there is this future in front of it. It also knows that it's well adapted, that it can take the situation that's in front of it. So it has been growing in an area for at least, a couple of them, certainly hundreds of years, potentially thousands of years. And it's been growing in one spot because, trees can't move. Climate has been changing. There's been, through this time, I think it was around this time or a little bit before, there was like the mini ice age. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. What do they call it something else too. It's like the Greater Downs or something like that. But essentially there was like this moment in medieval times where, according to Europe, that the temperature just dropped for some reason. And like it became really cold and quite like felt like the ice age was kind of on its way back again.
Wow.
And then it reversed. So it was just this little dip that lasted for 100 years or 200 years, and then it got back to normal in terms of the long-term trajectory we've been on.
Sure.
And so that little ice age happened probably while at least some of these trees were still alive. And so they took this like really harsh condition that was almost like, well, we're going back to the ice age, then also are still living in a time where it's like, well, we're actually barreling our way towards a completely different like ecosystem and climate in every possible way. And I bet you they're going to be just fine. I think they have been there before. They will be there again. And they just seem to be kind of moving forward.
Sure.
So they're able to take these small weather things. They're able to live in the world's toughest conditions and just continue on. And I was like, okay, that seems like something I should take to heart.
Sure.
I should think about it as a tree that is just focused on itself, but also, it's a part of an ecosystem. So it has other symbionts that actively live with it, that it lives also with. So it's a tree that doesn't just say, hey, I'm just going to do myself and whatever. Like the tree of heaven, it's all about itself. It'll kill everyone else if it can.
Or as I like to call it, the tree of hell.
Yes, exactly.
I came up with that.
You did. It's the first time anyone's ever heard it. It's copyright.
I remember when I said that, and I was like, pretty good. And you're like, Alex, you need to hang out with more arborists.
You need to hang out with more arborists, and also just give it a quick Google, because that is the quintessential, right?
And it's not like really clever.
Yeah, it's good enough. I think it's
pretty
good
ground
enough.
level.
Yeah. Now remember, there's no hyphens between tree, of, and hell.
That's right.
So anyway, so it's a tree that seems to me to be like a really good example of what I think people should look for in terms of like, how are we going to get through anything personally, but also, in the rest of the world in terms of the politics that are going on now. I know over the last several weeks, people have been doing a lot of reflecting. My Instagram has been chock full of people writing poetry and people giving examples of like just a big line of text that says breathe and take it easy, and like basically saying you're about to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Here's how you can bring yourself down. We've been here before. It's gonna be a new thing, but it's also the same thing we've done before.
Sure.
And weeks ago, you and I said that we woke up in the same place, the same country that we fell asleep in the day before. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm looking to this tree because, well, Alex, that's what I do. I look at trees for things. And I see this tree, the Mountain-Mahogany, as kind of this beacon that doesn't shine in the way that you can think of this huge, big, massive tree like what we've talked about, but shines in a way of just like, hey, I'm doing fine. You can be fine too.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Interesting case.
Anyway, this is
That's a beautiful sentiment.
Thank you. It's my big thing that I came up with this tree. And this is the only thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about it. I was like, I want to cover this tree. What do I want to cover about it? And I just kept on finding these themes that felt personal to me.
Profound timing, yeah.
So is there anything like this, or you can reflect upon what I've said?
Sure.
Or, as I noted earlier, do you have anything like that you've ever kind of looked towards?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I've faced my fair share of grief and adversity.
Yeah, you have. You really have.
And I've also been, chronically depressed for a while. We were just talking about this yesterday. In fact, you and I, off mic.
Yeah, sorry, everyone.
You got to join the Trinium to hear me talk about
All
my
right,
depression.
and that's a wrap. Man, Alex, am I fucking depressed?
But it's been like a year of this bout where it's like, what the fuck is going on? Where time is like moving slow and fast, and I'm getting things done, but I'm also not, and I'm upsetting everyone around me, and I feel like a fucking failure, and I'm turning 36 next year, and it's like this whole list of worries and doubts.
Yeah.
But I think my big thing, Casey, is that like I wake up in the morning.
Do you feel like P. Diddy? You can't say that anymore.
No, I've never felt like P. Diddy feels. Trust me. I wake up in the morning and I think, you know what? I feel like shit today. Right?
Man, that's so funny. I'm sorry to laugh right now, but you're like, you know what? I wake up in the morning and I think, and everyone is expecting you to say this positive, uplifting, like I do my mantra. Like, every morning I wake up and I feel like shit. It's not where I thought you were going to go.
That's coming. Basically what I'm trying to say is like one day at a time. Mm-hmm. And what I need to feel better about myself is some like forward progress. Mm-hmm. When I stagnate, I die. I'm like a shark, you gotta keep swimming. Yeah. So if I just like let literally everything in my life slip, and I spend all day just like hanging out in bed, I'm like, this is worse than death, Yeah. Okay. So like doing one small thing just to look back on the day and be like, you know what? I did that thing. And I don't know if that sounds, I try to avoid being like, I try to deprogram myself from like the capitalistic mindset of like, you gotta grind, you gotta wake up and grind.
Oh yeah. I should work on that. But yeah.
You really, well, I don't need to tell you.
I'm sorry, Casey. I'm not gonna say that.
But like, I hate all that shit, and I think it's okay to lay in bed all day if you want. I think it's basically okay to do anything you want. As long as you're not like hurting somebody else, blah, blah, blah. But I think it does help to get something done, even if it's like cleaning the dishes in my sink, meditating for 10 minutes, going for a short walk, going to get groceries, any small thing. Even you don't have to sit down and write a book.
Well. I will say I am thinking about trying to write more.
Yeah.
So there's another thing, another time.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Day at a time, looking back on the day and being like, okay, today wasn't a total waste. That's enough.
Yeah.
And maybe that sounds a little cynical, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I don't think that sounds cynical at all. I think that actually is refreshing in the sense that I think you're right. Most people are like, I got to produce, and if I don't produce, then I have failed today.
Yeah.
And that is how I feel most days. Like if I don't push something forward somehow, I feel like I've wasted the day.
Totally.
At least when I have a big project due, certainly. If I don't have a project due, or if I'm just like, Mom, my goal is to read a book today, and I don't read that book, then I'm like, God dang it. I got one page and I needed to get 20. But do you have something that you look towards outside of that? Ever? I know you make a lot of music, I know. But for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to look at a tree. I'm going to go think about, how does this tree work? Or go to nature and think like, okay, everything here seems to be working just fine. What can I take from this? Like, how can I reflect on how things work here? Can I make this work? Can I find this metaphor? Can I find a way that I can bring that into my consciousness?
Sure. I'm not really. I mean, I like Thich Nhat Hanh. If I need some like guidance, Thich Nhat Hanh's great.
Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh's so great. But there's no, I don't, I think like the way my depression presents itself is not like, God, I don't feel good. Let me go inside and find some insight on, it's just like, I don't feel good, shutting down.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to like rally from that position without physical action. It's very hard to think yourself out of feeling like shit.
Yeah.
For me. So not really, no.
Okay, yeah.
I suppose, and there are things I would like to do like that. Like I think nature is a great one because nature is full of great metaphors.
Yes.
For resilience and strength.
Yeah, I actually have a whole theory on that.
And resistance. Resilience and resistance.
Yeah, okay, very good. I'm very happy to hear the difference.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that's all.
Well said.
I'm done.
Yeah, well, I think it's very good. I think that I think it's an interesting dichotomy to say, yeah, no, I wake up and I think through the things and I work my way out of it versus saying, I'm in a weird funk. I want to go look at something else and see how it does it.
Sure.
And see if I can take something from that.
Maybe I could learn something from that.
Well, as I say these things, I think often just getting myself out and looking at nature rather than the news or a feed of some kind.
Or your wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not the Facebook wall. We mean a literal wall.
Oh, wow. I forgot that's what that was called.
Isn't that fun? Yeah, I think that like going out, like I'm imagining a specific spot in Oregon, in the Ochco Mountains, where I've seen a huge, beautiful grove of these trees. And I've been wanting to go back for a long time because when I first walked through, I was like, this is magical. This comes out of nowhere. And this is not the tree that's been anywhere around until right here, right now. And whenever I go out and I think about that, I'm like, I just want to go camping. Maybe I'll just go over there and just park up there and just chill.
Yeah.
I think often when I'm looking for something in nature, I'm not actually looking for something in nature. I'm just quieting everything else around me.
Yeah.
I'm able to talk to myself, which I do very often, and actually say, hey, okay, what am I feeling and how do I need to get through this? What do I need to kind of work my way through whatever feelings I'm feeling or get myself to a point where I'm like, okay, great. I got that out. Or, okay, great. I am moving towards a better space. Or, okay, great. I now understand what I'm thinking and I feel comfortable and confident in moving away.
Interesting.
Moving on to the next.
This is part of Thich Nhat Hanh's whole thing, which is inspiration. In order to, it's not like you're searching for answers.
Yeah.
You are just like quieting the mind and just like waiting for the answers to present themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which I really like that idea.
There you go.
It's inspiration, and there's like three things. It's like meditation, inspiration, and insight, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
Like the inspiration leads to insight. The meditation leads to inspiration.
I see. Okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well,
sorry I gave that to you backwards.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, Yoda does not do it like that, Alex. Yeah. Well, this is good to know. But
which nature is great for. Because
nature is great for.
The city is so loud, and I mean that in a many different ways. It is a loud place.
Yeah.
And it creates stress, and it creates like noise in your brain, like literal noise and like static. You know?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes.
So I think nature is like obviously the exact opposite. Where although nature can be fucking crazy.
Yeah,
too.
especially go down to those tropics. My God.
Yeah, maybe not a great place to sit and meditate in the middle of a jungle.
Yeah, well, get out to the very tippy top of a mountain where you have a little Cercocarpus or Cercocarpus growing out there just chilling.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, how old are you? And it doesn't respond. And you're like, that's fucking cool, man.
That's cool, man.
That's so cool.
That is so cool of you not to answer.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Well, I hope things, gosh, what do I want to say, Casey? You know, I'm here for you, pal.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I'm
And
here for you too.
I knew that. Thanks for telling me, but I did know that. And we hope that you out there can find some solace in these times because everybody has personal shit going on, and now we have one big collective thing going on, which fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's a whole new world. Yeah, I don't know. There will be a whole other time. It's not a tree-related podcast that we'll have to make to talk about that. It'll be a different one.
A political podcast?
Yes, exactly, which we're not qualified to do.
Yeah, I could not be paid to get interested in something like that.
Yeah, no, but I've given a lot of thought to it. I've given a lot of thought to like, okay, where are we at? What is this? Like, you got to deal with this reality.
Yeah.
And you got to accept and read what happened and make conclusions that are based in reality rather than based in some kind of denialism.
Sure, yeah.
Which is, what a lot of people are doing right now. And I think I think it's a good, reflective, necessary thing. Is it that we wanted to do this? No. But here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
So we'll see. So this is, for all intents and purposes, is very similar to our episode we did a while back on the Western Sycamore.
Yes.
We sit under and reflect. This is a different kind of more existential reflection for the tree that we're dealing with now.
Kind of a doom-filled reflection.
Yes, exactly. So don't. I think what I care about with this, and what I think makes this this Curlleaf Mahogany a little bit different, is that this tree is looks at doom and just doesn't give two shits. It's
Sure.
like, sorry, whatever. Is that a giant snowstorm? Whatever. Is that fire coming through? Yeah, whatever. Is what's happening over there? I don't know. Yeah, this is where I am. This is what I do.
We'll deal with
I'm going
it.
to continue to do so for as long as I can.
That's great. Some things are just so outside of our control that to try to think a way to control it will drive you to madness.
Yeah, it'll drive you to madness.
I have actually been working a lot on acceptance, Casey. I feel like that's my big life struggle. Like when I'm 80, I'll be like, still working on acceptance.
Still working on acceptance.
Hopefully we'll have progressed by then.
Yeah.
But just like, I don't know, just, hey, it's like resistance creates tension, that's what those bands are all about that you use at the gym.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. We love you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening.
Alex, we cannot skip over a review for this tree.
It is going to be so interesting to see where we go. We must do so after a break. We will be right back with Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary. It's time for our review of the Curlleaf Mountain-Mahogany. Here's how it works. We're going to give some final thoughts on this tree and then give it a rating of 0 to 10 golden cones of honor. Casey, as a resident expert, we'll begin with you.
All right, Alex. I really, as I have said, really like this tree.
Good start.
This is the same tree that Justin Davies, the famous, initially saw that got him into trees in the first place.
That's right.
Yeah, he's got a really beautiful video about it while he makes beads from its wood.
Of course he does.
Yes, which happens to be extremely strong.
He's amazing.
It really is. And it is a tree that is, I think, underrated, but also not overrated at the same time. I think it's quite perfectly rated. And
it's just rated.
It's just rated. And I think in that realm, I'm going to give it a perfect rating of 8.0.
Ah, great.
Because I think it's just right down the middle and it does exactly what it needs to do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. As you know, I like, at the same time, exceptional trees of different regards. This tree is exceptional in its own way, and its adorable fruit just captivate me. I love their little tails.
Yeah.
I just think it's the just the cutest thing in the entire
They're
world.
pretty fantastic.
So I just think they're great. So every time I see one, am just taken by it, and I love identifying them. There's multiple different species. This is by far the most common, I believe, across the West. So I'm going to give it a straight 8.0 because it's just a fabulous tree, and that is not under nor overrated.
Very well. Done.
Alex? What about you?
Very well.
Very well.
Oh, boy. Wow. Casey?
Alex.
I didn't know that this tree existed until about an hour ago.
Excellent.
So I have no emotional attachment to it. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm also going to say, you know what? My emotional attachment or lack of thereof is not going to play into my review today.
Really?
So I'm going to go as if I'm just going to go nice and clean, as if I'm just like judging this thing completely logically.
I feel like this is when a judge says you cannot consider this evidence
Yes.
while you are making your verdict.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is off the record. So let's start with the morphology of the tree.
Okay.
It's
so how it looks.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's
All right.
scrubby, like we've said. It's like a shrub, like a scrubby shrub. Got like its fairy godmother turned it into a tree, but you can still totally tell that it was originally a scrub.
Yeah, everyone's like, we know.
You're not really passing.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's very like Mediterranean, you know?
Yes, yeah. It reminds me of a bunch of shrubs that are standing on each other's shoulders wearing a large tree coat. Yeah.
Yes. I love its leaves. That might be my favorite aspect of it.
Oh, interesting.
There's little paddles, little thick paddles.
Yeah.
Love them. And the flowers and the fruit, very curious, very cool. I also love I love an underdog story, and my head canon is that like this is like related somehow culturally to the bristlecone pine.
Yeah,
and the
okay.
bristlecone pine is like this golden child. You know, everybody fucking loves it. It's famous. It's on postcards. And then the curlleaf mahogany. Excuse me, the Curlleaf Mountain-Mahogany.
Yes, it's like half cropped out of the photos.
Yes. It's like, you know, it's just like looking on and being like, it's not, I don't think it's like a jealous tree, you know?
Yeah.
Just like, it has, I see it as like a very neutral character. Like, how does the bristlecone pine's fame affect me? Not
Yeah,
at all. I'm
not
just
at
going
all.
to keep doing my thing.
I don't care.
I love that. So I'm going to give this, I'm going to go a little higher than you, Case.
Wow.
I'm going 8.25.
8.25 and a quarter.
Yep. 8.25 and a quarter. So I'm going 8.5.
Oh, okay. Okay, done.
Yep.
I love how we math here.
All right. That
Fabulous. 8.2, 8.5, 8.25.25.
8.25 plus 0.25.
Okay, yes,
technically.
correct.
Yeah.
Technically. Fabulous.
There you have it.
What a beautiful tree.
A
Shout
great
out to
tree.
Justin.
Yeah, shout out to Justin Davies, one of the best. Casey, it's time for our beloved Completely Arbitrary AMA.
All right.
And if you want to ask a question
love
on
this
this podcast, become a Treemium member and support the pod and get lovely things in return over at arbitrarypod.supercast.com. You can also go to arbitrarypod.com and click on support the pod. Casey, this one is from Katie.
I love Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie. We love you. Katie lives in Florida.
I've heard of this place.
I thought this was quite topical because Katie asked this. It says created at 5 hours ago.
Whoa, okay. That's out of syntax, but okay, perfect.
Sure. I live in Florida. Tough times over here lately.
Yeah, for sure.
My area got hit by both of the hurricanes pretty bad, and we lost a ton of trees. Even a month later, there's still down trees on the side of basically every road.
Jeez, I cannot imagine that.
While I know eventually the stuff will decompose, there's too much to really clean up, and it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
The fact that there's so much got me a bit curious. How does this affect our local environment? While down trees may be the least of some of our concerns after these horrible storms, many lost their homes and livelihoods. As a tree lover, I'm curious how this affects our environment as well.
Yeah.
Now, my first thought, thanks for asking, Katie. My first thought, Case, is like, this ain't too bad.
Okay.
It's bad from some perspectives. The trees, I mean.
Yes, yeah. This is our narrow focus here.
But as we know, a fallen tree, when one door closes, another opens.
That's exactly right.
A fallen tree can create habitat for many things.
Exactly, it does. Very often so.
So I'm like, hey, the ground, the scene on the ground is like stoked right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's my thought.
I think you're spot on. So from a couple different regards, we can kind of approach this. One being the more trees that are growing and that fall and get, not toppled over, the fewer you have creating this larger canopy, creating a forest or shading houses, things like that, right? Which means that you are losing the ecosystem benefits that these large big trees were providing.
Sure. The Green Island. Green Island?
Oh, no, you're thinking the heat island effect.
Green Island.
Yes.
I've been reading too much Song of Ice and Fire.
Hey, sure have. Wow. So yeah, that's one thing that's very very negative. You lose those things. A lot of times in the process, it's because that tree got blown over by 150-mile-an-hour winds onto your house.
Yeah.
And no one likes that. No one wants that. And it's something that you are, as a tree person, always dealing with, trying to tell people trees are really strong. They're going to do just fine. But when you get a hurricane force wind, there's nothing you can do about it. It can be the world's healthiest, strongest tree. It's going to get tipped over by that. It's just the nature of strength, So push something beyond it, it's going to break. And that is a negative, ultimately, if you are looking at this larger kind of urban ecosystem. So if you look at the smaller portions of that ecosystem, or say it's the forested area between spaces, then you are exactly right. Every tree that falls, that starts to decay, helps build the soil. It helps build homes for different things. It helps allow more fungus to come in. It allows more small microclimates for different species to grow. And a lot of those, either fires have come through and they've gotten rid of them, centuries ago, or they are sitting there and get moved out of the way when forestry comes through or something. When they're saying, hey, we're going to, we have all these trees. We're going to go scrape all these trees off. We're going to turn those into paper or wood or whatever. And then the area underneath, they usually pile all the debris into these huge slash piles, or what they're called, and they burn them.
Okay.
So if that happens, then you kind of lose all of the material that would be rebuilding the soil and rebuilding the fungal network and all that kind of stuff.
It's like when people use a leaf blower. It drives me insane.
Yeah. Like,
I live in an apartment complex with a little front courtyard that has grass and trees. And every Wednesday,
the day,
I'm woken up by somebody leaf blowing the fucking leaves just around. I don't even know where they're going. They blow them onto the curb or something.
Yeah, that's right. They usually blow them out to the road is a super common thing.
Yeah.
And then they just expect that a machine is going to come through and clean it, a street cleaner, right?
I'm so close to writing a letter to management saying, leaving leaves on the ground has a lot of good benefits.
Yeah, it does.
And you know what has the opposite, with the same amount of benefits, but they're negative, is a leaf blower.
Yeah, exactly. You are so spot on there.
Yeah, I hate that shit.
It's
I
a
never
huge
cared
problem.
about that until we started this podcast.
Really?
And now every
Is that
time I
true?
see it, I'm like, motherfucker, I'm going to go over there and cut his cord.
Yeah. Oh man, we should talk about that next week then, because that's
leaf blowing?
Yeah. Well, yeah, leaf blowers, or just getting rid of leaves. Why should you not do that?
That's a great episode idea.
Wonderful. I don't remember what else I had covered for next week. So yeah, done. That sounds great. But yeah, that's exactly right, Alex. It is it is a part of the ecosystem. It is an input of nutrients that is really good for the soil, for the organisms that are not humans. And inevitably, as they do that, they in the industry we call mow, blow, and go, which are these landscape companies, and they do precisely that. They mow the lawn, they edge it really fast, and they blow all the topsoil and all the bits and parts and pieces that are good for soil away into the street, into a bag, into whatever, and they get rid of it.
Now this is sort of unrelated, but maybe also not really. Do you think that it's just we don't like how it looks?
100%.
It looks messy.
Straight aesthetics.
That's so fucking stupid.
Exactly. And it's aesthetics that are misguided, because it then makes the soil of the places that you have your plants growing. So, your planter beds, it reduces that soil, the organic matter, which reduces the health of the soil, which reduces the health of the plants that are growing in it.
6 months later, those people are going to be going, why are all my plants look like shit?
Yes, exactly. You want healthy plants, you need healthy soil.
Yeah.
You blow all the leaves and all the debris away that helps make soil healthy, you don't have healthy soil.
Burning, I to loop it back, this is kind of the same thing. If people go around like cleaning it all up and burning it, well, that tree was full of good stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes when you burn it, it's even better because it leaves the ash and there's a certain amount of nutrients still left on the ground.
Okay.
But if you take it and just blow it away and you leave nothing, period, like no matter at all, other than, this bare soil, then it really is exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
So back to Katie's question. If you have a large amount of debris that's left on the ground, first off, it may be a fire hazard. Move it away from your buildings just in case. There's not a whole lot of hazards like that in Florida, but historically, the entire Southeast was burned all the time. It was the same thing there as it is out here. It used to be way more prairies than it is now. So that area used to burn more. All of that downwoody debris, though, creates all the habitat for all the interesting things that live there. Now, if it doesn't create habitat for the things you want to see, the larger, the birds and snakes and mammals and things like that.
Voles,
lovely voles.
I love voles.
We got to remember that all of those things are part of an ecosystem. So if you have a big down piece of wood, that tree will create homes for insects and frogs and other arthropods and other weird creatures that live down there, salamanders. Then those things are part of the food chain that gets larger and bigger. So I always tell people about birds, for example. If you want to see really good, interesting birds, then you need a large dead tree somewhere near your house.
A snag?
Exactly. Because a wildlife snag is where things live. It's all the insects live in there, and all the birds go to eat the insects. If you want chickadees, leave dead parts inside your tree because they come through and clean out all of the teeny tiniest little insects and nobody even sees. That is how you get these kinds of things. You cannot just say, I want birds, and then put a bird feeder up. They'll come and then they'll go. But if you want to create an ecosystem, it starts from literally the ground up, and then the things that are on top of the ground. So for our ecosystem, a giant disturbance that comes through like a hurricane, it resets it in one regard, but it also resets it in another regard. So one regard is it resets it in terms of the trees are now going to start to regrow again, and your forest is starting from zero, getting back up to a size. But it also resets it in that it gives homes to everything, and it starts this other process for all the small little bits and parts that live that we don't really think about or we don't see.
Totally.
So it's really good in that regard. But like I said, in terms of the benefits of an urban ecosystem, it's really bad.
Sure.
Yeah.
But what if the trees were just like a little, is grove the right word?
Sure.
In the middle of a field?
Yeah.
It's probably better that they're
way better
that they're downed,
yeah,
right?
100%. Leave them there. Let the whole thing come back again.
Yeah.
And then as you do that, you will create homes for things that will probably make whatever's going on in the field even better. If the tree got its top blown off and now you can have an owl there, it is going to be catching all the things that are going to be eating all the other stuff.
I got so excited when you mentioned owls.
There you go. Maybe we should talk about owls.
We
sometime.
should. We should. All right. Well, thanks, Katie, for your question. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
We hope everybody's safe down there and take good care of yourselves. And as we said, if you've got a question for the podcast, become a Treemium member. You get a whole. I always say if you've got a question for a podcast, then become a Treemium member. But there are a lot of other things you can do as a Treemium member, Casey.
That's true, Alex.
You can listen to the show ad-free. I always forget that one. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
You can access the AMA, which we just did.
Yep.
You get a monthly merch store discount. You can use it anytime.
Off?
Yeah, anytime you want to buy a piece of merch, you get 20% off, period. You get early access to new merch.
Uh-huh.
You get early access to live events that we may do. You get bonus audio content. You get live streams that we just did one of those.
You get the whole thing.
Yeah, so it's a great way to support the podcast, and we really appreciate it. And you know what we should do, Casey?
Ooh, what?
We should get some of our Treemium members to write reviews.
Ooh.
And do a little Jess M says that,
Hey, yeah, you know what? Put it in there and go to the AMA and say review.
Yes.
And then we'll read it live.
That'd be great.
Yeah, make sure it's funny though.
Yeah. It's got to be funny. Impress us.
Gotta be funny.
All right.
All right. Well, before or as we
Yes,
leave,
Casey's.
one thing. Oh, I'm sorry. This is my book called The Golden Ratio: The Story
Oh.
of Phi, the World's Most Astonishing Number,
This,
by Mario Livio.
I don't mean to judge it,
Yeah.
but when you told me you were reading this book, I was like, I cannot imagine something more boring. I'm sure it's more than what I thought.
I bet you it's not actually. It is exactly what it sounds like. But he's a good writer so far, and I'm enjoying it.
Good for him.
But one thing he's talking about in the section Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans.
Let's
which
go.
is-
Let's
which is great.
let's end the episode with this. So we'll say goodbye and thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. And with Mini Vandal's song "Milk," Casey,
Yes.
please take it away.
Well, this has to do with your comment on meditation, what you do in the morning.
Oh, lovely.
Where this is what the students were advised upon rising to repeat. As soon as you awake, in order, lay the actions to be done the coming day. Similarly, at nightfall, they were to recite, allow not sleep to close your eyes before 3 times reflecting on your actions of the day, what deeds done well, what not, what left undone.
Completely Arbitrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp. Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals. If you want to support this podcast and become a Treemium member, head over to arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Thanks for listening.